Great Replacement theory is this hypothesis, this idea that Western white people are being gradually replaced by people who are not ethnically white. And it's some kind of grand conspiracy, right? So as you can imagine, it's very xenophobic, it's very racist, very anti-Eastern, and all around it's also a load of bollocks. But it has grown in its prominence over the last few years on the internet, and it's been around for a long time. Some versions of it have existed for centuries in some form or another. But you might be surprised to know that a mainstream newspaper in the UK is publishing an article that appears to promote it. It appears to. I'm sure they'd deny that. I'm sure they would. But it certainly seems to reflect a lot of the key points of the Great Replacement theory. And it's a very, very dark read. So they tweeted, The Spectator, quote, "More than a third of UK births now involve at least one foreign-born parent. In parts of London, 80% of births are to foreign-born mothers." End quote. Cool. I don't really care, to be honest, mate. It's fine. But Lionel Shriver, who wrote the article, goes on, "Even delivering those dry statistics feels dangerous. As for their implications, none of you readers is supposed to care. In particular, white Britons who greet those figures with anything short of delight know perfectly well to keep their traps shut. The lineages of white Britons in their homeland commonly go back hundreds of years. Yet for the country's original inhabitants to confront becoming a minority in the UK, perhaps in the 2060s, with any hint of mournfulness, much less consternation, is now racist and beyond the pale. I submit that proscription is socially and even biologically unnatural. For Westerners to passively accept and even abet incursions by foreigners so massive that the native-born are effectively surrendering their territory without a shot fired is biologically perverse." If you were studying history at GCSE or A-level or something, and if you think back, if you're doing it right now, imagine, going into school tomorrow and reading that. Or if you're way out of school now, you're older, imagine reading that in history. And someone told you it was from Mein Kampf or some other kind of Nazi propaganda. You would probably believe them. This is very, very bad. I want to kind of focus on the last bit, because that's really baffling. So it starts off saying, for Westerners to passively accept, which is a bit odd in of itself, because Westerners aren't all white. So and a lot of immigration to the UK is from other Western countries. We get a lot of immigration from Europe. So for Westerners to passively accept and even abet incursions by foreigners. So we're now talking about immigrants coming to the country seeking a better life, wanting to start a business, go to school, get a good job, work in the public sector or the private sector, whatever it is. Or refugees fleeing war zones and famines and epidemics and persecution to come to the UK to be safe. That's now an incursion. Talking about that in sort of military terms. By foreigners so massive that the native-born are effectively surrendering their territory. Now, native-born is an interesting thing, because they talk about how the native-born Brits, us native-born Brits, we're going to be a minority probably by 2060 in our own country. But that's not true. White native-born Brits are going to be a minority in the UK by 2060, probably, if demographic trends continue. Now, that's not what they're saying. They're saying that native-born Brits are, but we know what the implication is here. It's that, the other people, native-born Brits won't be a minority in Britain by 2060. White native-born Brits will be. But they view those two things as the same. So I mean, that's just wrong, but then also, you know, it's a bit ethno-nationalist. But who cares, man? That's fine. I don't... Really? That's the problem we're focusing on? That white people are going to be a minority in the UK? Probably, by 2060. Not, you know, we're not going to focus on anything else. You know, that's the big thing you want to write about, you know, not climate change. You know, you don't want to write about the crisis of wages stagnating for decades. You don't want to talk about how living standards have started to get worse in most communities. You don't want to talk about how we should be investing more in the police force, in the fire service, how we should, reverse privatisation in public health care. You don't want to, you don't want to talk about maybe the housing crisis, how we can solve that. You don't want to talk about how we can invest more in research and development and space travel. You don't want to talk about how we can improve the standard of employment in this country. You don't want to talk about trade. You don't want to talk about any of that. Education, nah. None of that. White people will be a minority by 2060. God. Wow. Wouldn't that be terrible? I don't care. I don't care. But then it gets even worse. Surrendering their territory, again, military idea, without a shot fired. Now, the Spectator will deny this, but this just appear, at face value, to be somewhat of a positive view of violent retaliation to peaceful immigration and refugee settlement. That's what this appears to be. Now, I'm sure they will deny it, and I'm sure Lionel Shriver will totally deny that that's what they meant. But it does kind of seem like it, doesn't it? Because they say after that, so the idea that that native-born Brits, white Brits, won't surrender their territory without a shot fired is biologically perverse. Biologically perverse. We're now drawing a line in the sand between native-born Brits and everyone else in biological terms. That's race pseudoscience. You know, we are rapidly in this article, we go from a bit xenophobic, like kind of culturally very conservative, quite authoritarian, straight down the rabbit hole very rapidly. We tumble down it, and then suddenly we get to neo-Nazi kind of ethno-nationalism with some very strong hints of what appear to be eugenics. A shots fired. That sounds like ethnic cleansing. Without a shot fired. Biologically perverse. What? We're the same species. This article blows my mind that a human being can think that in the 21st century. We often hear people like Lawrence Fox and Darren Grimes go on and on and on and on endlessly about how the UK isn't racist and we're one of the most tolerant countries in the world and all these things. And while we are one of the most tolerant countries in the world, there's still a long way to go for even the most tolerant in the world. And clearly we have problems with racism in this country. If someone can not only think that for Westerners to possibly accept and even abet incursions by foreigners so massive that the native-born effectively surrendering their territory without a shot fired is biologically perverse when it comes to immigration of non-white people to the UK, but actually publish that in a major newspaper is really, really, really concerning and indicative of just how far we have to come as a society. The problem is not that people from other countries are coming here and then mingling with us, and some of us are getting married to them, some of us native Brits, and they're having children, they're starting families, they're having they'll get jobs, they start working, they do they start a business, maybe they go to school, whatever it is. That's not a problem. That's a good thing. That's a good thing. And I know all politicians, especially the Tories, but Labour as well, are a bit afraid to confront this, except for a few. David Lammy is always very, very good on this issue, and I know a lot of people call him racist against white people for saying these kind of things, but You know, there is absolutely no reason why that is a bad thing, that more foreign people come into the country. It's not a bad thing. What actually happens is you're getting exploited by an ultra wealthy manager or CEO or whatever, and then they realise someone else will work for less money than you, and then they fire you and choose them. So both of you are being exploited. It's not their fault. It's the manager's fault, and it's the politicians who allow such an exploitative and undemocratic economic system to exist in society. But what's really, really concerning is that we appear to be just discounting non-white native-born Brits. If you're born in this country, you're a native. If you're born in this country and you've lived here most of your life, you're as British as it gets. It doesn't matter what the colour of your skin is. I can't believe I'm actually saying, I can't believe I'm even saying this. It's 2021. It's 2021. And this is something that we're having to say on this show, that actually, no, it doesn't matter what colour skin you have, you can still be British. And it doesn't matter that eventually white people will probably become a minority in the UK, because who cares? We are not biologically so different from everyone else. There are minuscule differences like skin colour and eye colour, pigmentation. We're the same. We just look different. Oh my god, I'm hearing myself and I'm thinking this is just, oh wow. I don't even have any words. I am pretty speechless that this is actually something that's been printed. Yeah. I understand that some people are worried about mass immigration because they think it might, you know, affect our culture negatively. But I think what you find is that 99% of immigrants don't, you know, they want to come and they want to integrate in society and bring some of these incredible cultural elements from where they're from. It just makes our culture more vibrant, more interesting. But you know how boring British culture would be if we didn't have influences from anywhere else in the world. Or even if we only had influences from other majority white countries. There is no cultural reason to not want this. There is no economic reason, as we've already established, to not want this. There is only reasons of xenophobia and racism. Don't fall for it. Don't fall for it. Because this is how ultra wealthy people, people in positions of significant, really, really significant power and wealth, convince you, ordinary people, working people, decent human beings, that actually it's not the billionaires who avoid their taxes that are the problem. It's not that rich hedge fund manager that helped crash the economy so they could make a couple of £100 million. They're not the problem. The problem is people coming over from Bangladesh, people fleeing from war, from Syria, coming from, you know, from Afghanistan or Syria. The problem is people who are coming from Botswana. Don't listen to them. We all have a hell of a lot more in common with non-white immigrants and refugees to this country than we do with the likes of Jacob Rees-Mogg and Rishi Sunak and Boris Johnson. Now, I want to say again before we end the video, they're talking about native-born Brits in this article, but they're talking about them as if it's only white people. Now that is deeply racist. No two ways about it, it's just racist. So, usually I ask for your thoughts in the comments at the end of a video, but I certainly hope we'd all be in agreement on this issue. It's not really much. But, so I'll ask you a slightly different thing. What do you guys think is the best way of counteracting stuff like this? I think new media, alternative media, grassroots media, the kind of stuff that we're doing on this show and generally in part of the Demographic Network is a great antidote. It's part of the solution to the problem. But what else? What else do you think we can do to help curb this kind of racism and misinformation? I'd love to hear your thoughts. So thank you all very much for watching, as always, and I'll see you in the next one.